For 20 years, my husband called me stupid, not behind my back, not in moments of anger. Every single day, he reminded me that I was too dumb to understand business, too simple to grasp complex topics, too emotional to think rationally. 20 years of sweetheart, let me explain this in a way you'll understand, followed by him talking to me like I was a child. 20 years of him introducing me at parties as just a housewife, with that patronizing smile that made everyone pity me. 20 years of watching him cheat. Watching him lie. Watching him plan to divorce me and leave me with nothing, thinking I was too stupid to see it coming. But here's what Richard didn't know. I wasn't a housewife. I was never a housewife. I was Catherine Morrison, senior partner at Morrison & Associates, the most feared divorce lawyer in the city. The woman who'd taken down 73 cheating spouses and recovered over $340 million for my clients over 2 decades. And when Richard finally filed for divorce, thinking he'd walk away with everything while I begged for scraps, it took me exactly 20 minutes in that courtroom to destroy him. 20 minutes to take his company, his house, his cars, his reputation, and his future. 20 years he called me stupid. 20 minutes I proved exactly how wrong he was. My name is Catherine Morrison, and this is the story of how I dismantled my husband's life piece by piece, using the one weapon he never knew I had, the law. But to understand how we got to that courtroom, you need to know how I became the person Richard Morrison never bothered to see. 20 years ago, I was a 28-year-old junior associate at Whitmore & Klein, one of the most prestigious law firms in the state. I'd graduated top of my class from Harvard Law. I'd clerked for a federal judge. I was hungry, ambitious, and determined to make partner before I turned 35. That's when I met Richard Morrison at a charity gala. He was 32, handsome, charming, working his way up the corporate ladder at his father's investment firm. He wore confidence like an expensive suit. When he walked into a room, people noticed. When he spoke, people listened. And when he looked at me across that crowded ballroom, I felt something I'd never felt before. Seen. We dated for 6 months. He was attentive, romantic, supportive of my career. He came to the firm's events, bragged about my courtroom victories to his friends, called me his warrior woman. Then he proposed. On a beach in the Maldives, with a ring that cost more than my annual salary, he got down on one knee and said, "Catherine, you're the smartest, strongest woman I've ever met. I want to spend the rest of my life learning from you." I said yes. Of course I said yes. The problem started 3 months after the wedding. "Cat," Richard said one evening, looking up from his laptop at our kitchen table. "I've been thinking. Morrison & Klein is pretty demanding. Long hours, lots of stress, and we've been talking about starting a family." "We have been talking about it," I agreed. "But I'm up for partner review next year. After that, I can pull back on my hours." "Or," he interrupted gently, "you could pull back now. Take some time off. Enjoy life a little. We don't need 2 incomes. My salary more than covers us. You could pursue hobbies, volunteer, maybe take some cooking classes." I laughed. Actually laughed. "Richard, I'm not quitting law. This is my career, my passion." His expression changed. Just slightly. A tightening around his eyes. A hardness in his smile. "Of course. I just meant. You're working so hard. I worry about you." But it wasn't worry. It was the first crack in the mask. Over the next year, the comments became more frequent. More pointed. "Do you really need to work late again tonight? Your job is causing you so much stress. Is it worth it? The partners are just using you. They'll never actually make you partner. Maybe if you were home more, we'd actually have a marriage." And then, the final blow. I made partner. I was 31 years old. The youngest partner in firm history. My name went on the door, Morrison & Klein. I had an office with a view of the city skyline. I had a corner parking spot. I had everything I'd dreamed of. Richard threw me a party. Invited all our friends, his business colleagues, my firm partners. He gave a toast that made everyone laugh and cheer. "To Catherine," he said, raising his glass, "who works harder than anyone I know, who never gives up, Who proved that even when everyone doubted her, she could achieve her dreams. Everyone applauded. But I noticed he'd said, even when everyone doubted her, not even when I doubted her. That night, after everyone left and we were cleaning up, Richard said something that changed everything. You know this partnership means you'll be working even longer hours, right? Probably, I admitted. But it's what I've been working toward. So when exactly do we have time to start a family? His tone was sharp now. No more gentle concern. Or is your career more important than our marriage? Than having children? That's not fair, Richard. What's not fair, he interrupted, is that I married a woman who wanted a family, and instead I got a workaholic who cares more about billable hours than her own husband. It was the first time he'd raised his voice to me, the first time he'd made me feel small, but it wouldn't be the last. Over the next 5 years, Richard systematically deconstructed my confidence. It was subtle at first. Small comments that seemed like concern but were actually criticism. That suit makes you look severe. Maybe something softer? Did you really need to correct him at dinner? It made everyone uncomfortable. Your voice gets so shrill when you argue. It's not attractive. Then it escalated to outright dismissal. Whenever I talked about a case, he'd interrupt, "That's nice, honey. But let me explain how business actually works." When I tried to discuss legal strategies, he'd smile condescendingly. "That's too complicated for dinner conversation. Let's talk about something we can both understand." When my firm won a major case that made headlines, he told people at parties, "Oh, Kat was part of the team. She does paperwork mostly. The real lawyers handle the courtroom stuff." I never corrected him in public. Because here's the thing about being a divorce lawyer. You see patterns. You see how abusers operate. You see how they isolate their victims, make them doubt themselves, cut them off from support systems. And I recognized every single tactic Richard was using on me. So I made a decision. A calculated, strategic decision that would define the next 15 years of my life. I would let him think he was winning. I stopped talking about work at home. When he asked about my day, I'd say, "Oh, just the usual office stuff. Nothing interesting." I stopped wearing power suits around him. Started dressing more casually. Let him think I was becoming the soft wife he wanted. I stopped correcting him when he misrepresented my career to friends. Let him call me just part of the team, while I was actually lead counsel on cases worth millions. And most importantly, I started documenting everything, every condescending comment. Every time he dismissed my intelligence, every moment he made me feel small, because I knew, with the absolute certainty that comes from representing hundreds of women in my exact position, that eventually, Richard would cheat. Men like Richard always cheat. Men who need to feel superior to their wives. Men who marry smart women and then punish them for being smart. Men who say they want equals but actually want servants. They always cheat. I just had to wait for him to do it. And when he did, I had to be ready, so I built 2 lives. At home, I was Kat Morrison, the quiet wife who did the grocery shopping, hosted dinner parties, smiled politely when Richard's colleagues made jokes about letting the little woman handle the decorations. At work, I was Catherine Morrison, the divorce attorney who'd never lost a case. The woman other lawyers warned their clients about. The one who found every hidden asset, every offshore account, every mistress, every lie. I specialized in high-net-worth divorces. Cheating husbands with complicated finances, men who thought they could hide money, undervalue assets, and walk away rich while their wives got nothing. I destroyed them, methodically, completely, legally. And with every case I won, I refined my skills, learned new tricks, discovered better ways to track hidden income, prove adultery, demonstrate financial abuse. I was preparing, training, getting ready for the day when I would use all of those skills on the man I'd married. Richard never suspected a thing. Why would he? His wife was too stupid to understand complex topics. His wife was just a housewife who did some office work. His wife was exactly who he'd conditioned her to be. Invisible. But here's what Richard didn't understand about invisible women. We see everything. We hear everything, and we remember everything. For 15 years, I watched him come home late, smelling of perfume that wasn't mine. For 15 years, I saw the deleted text messages, the business trips that weren't actually business trips, the client dinners that lasted until 2 a.m. For 15 years, I documented it all, discreetly, carefully, legally, credit. Card statements showing hotel rooms booked when he was supposedly at, conferences, phone records showing thousands of calls to numbers that weren't in his contacts, social media posts from work events where he was photographed with the same woman multiple times, a woman who worked in his company's marketing department, a woman named Jessica who was 26 years old and didn't know Richard was married because he never wore his wedding ring to the office. I knew about Jessica before Richard even realized he had feelings for her. Because I'm very, very good at my job, and I waited, patiently, for the perfect moment. The perfect moment came on our 20th wedding anniversary. Richard made a reservation at the restaurant where he'd proposed, the expensive French place, downtown with the prix-fixe menu that cost $400 per person. I bought a new dress, got my hair done, put on the diamond earrings he'd given me for our 10th anniversary, the ones I later discovered he'd expensed to his company as a client gift. I thought maybe, just maybe, this would be the night he remembered who I used to be. Who we used to be. I arrived at the restaurant at 7 p.m., our reservation time. Richard wasn't there yet. The hostess sat me at our table, a quiet corner booth with a view of the city lights. 15 p.m., no Richard. 7:30 p.m., no Richard. 45 p.m., no Richard. At 8:00 p.m., my phone buzzed. A text message, sorry babe, emergency at work. Can't make it. Order something nice and I'll pay you back. Happy anniversary, can't make it. On our 20th anniversary, after 20 years of marriage, after I'd spent 2 hours getting ready, after I'd cleared my schedule, moved meetings, said no to a major client just to make sure I'd be there, he couldn't make it. But here's the thing about being a divorce lawyer with trust issues and excellent investigative skills. I'd installed tracking software on Richard's phone 6 months earlier. Legal in our state for spouses, and ethically questionable but personally satisfying. I pulled up the tracking app. Richard's location pinged back immediately. He wasn't at his office. He wasn't at any client meeting. He was at the Rosewood Hotel, room 1247, the same hotel room he'd been visiting twice a week for the past 4 months. The hotel room registered under Jessica's name. I sat in that restaurant for another hour, ordered the most expensive bottle of wine, the filet mignon, the lobster bisque, the chocolate souffle. Every bite tasted like fury. Every sip tasted like victory. Because Richard had just made the biggest mistake of his life. He'd chosen our 20th wedding anniversary, the most symbolic date possible, to cheat on me instead of celebrating with me. And in divorce court, symbolism matters. Dates matter. Optics matter. A man who couldn't even show up to his own anniversary dinner? A jury would hate him. I paid the $600 bill with our joint credit card, left a $200 tip, and walked out of that restaurant a different woman than the one who'd walked in. For 20 years, I'd been playing the long game, waiting, documenting, preparing. But that night, sitting alone at our anniversary dinner while my husband was in a hotel room with his 26-year-old mistress, that night, the game ended. Richard came home at 11:30 p.m. I was in bed, reading a legal brief on my tablet, though he thought I was reading a romance novel, because that's what he expected his simple wife to read. Hey, babe, he said, loosening his tie. Sorry about tonight. The Henderson account is a nightmare. I was stuck in meetings until almost midnight. I looked up at him. This man I'd married. This man I'd loved. This man who'd spent the last 20 years trying to convince me I was stupid. It's okay, I said softly. I understand. Work is important, he smiled, relieved. You're the best, Kat. I don't know what I'd do without you. Neither do I said. He didn't catch the double meaning. He never did. Richard went to shower. While the water ran, I opened my laptop and drafted the email I'd been mentally writing for years. To James Fisher, Managing Partner Morrison and Klein, from Catherine Morrison, Senior Partneree Personal Leave of Absence James. I need to invoke the personal leave policy for partners facing divorce. I'll need 3 months, starting immediately. I'll brief Sarah on my current caseload and make sure all clients are transitioned smoothly. I know you'll ask if I'm sure. I am. It's time. Catherine, I hit send at 11:47 p.m. on our 20th wedding anniversary, and then I did something I hadn't done in 20 years. I cried. Not sad tears. Not angry tears. Relief tears. Because finally, I could stop pretending. The next morning, I woke up early, made coffee, made breakfast, sat at the kitchen table waiting for Richard to come downstairs. When he did, he was already on his phone, checking emails, barely acknowledging my existence. Richard, I said calmly, we need to talk. Can it wait? I have an 8 a.m. meeting. No, I said. It can't wait. Sit down. Something in my tone made him look up. Really look at me. Maybe for the first time in years. What's wrong? He asked, a hint of concern creeping into his voice. I slid an envelope across the table. Plain white. No markings. What's this? He asked, not touching it. Open it. He did. Inside was a single photograph. Richard and Jessica, taken 3 nights ago through the window of the Rosewood Hotel, room 1247. You could see everything. His face, her face. The unmistakable intimacy of 2 people who thought they were alone. Richard's face went white, then red. Then white again. Kat, I can explain. I don't need you to explain, I said, my voice steady. I need you to listen. For the first time in 20 years, you're going to listen to me without interrupting, without condescending, without calling me stupid. I never called you. You called me stupid every single day for 20 years, Richard. Maybe not with those exact words, but every time you talked down to me, every time you dismissed my opinions, every time you explained simple concepts to me like I was a child, you called me stupid. He started to speak. I held up my hand. I'm not finished. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to move out of this house. Today. You're going to take your clothes, your laptop, and nothing else. And then you're going to wait for my lawyer to contact you about the divorce. Your lawyer? Richard laughed. Actually laughed. Kat, sweetheart, you can't afford a good lawyer. I've been handling all our finances. I know exactly what's in your accounts. You have maybe $20,000. That'll pay for maybe a month of decent legal representation. After that, you'll come crawling back begging for a settlement. I smiled. For the first time in years, I smiled at my husband with genuine feeling. The feeling was pity. You're right, I said. I can't afford a good lawyer. I don't need to afford one. Because, Richard, I am the lawyer. He blinked. Confused. What? I'm Catherine Morrison, senior partner at Morrison and Klein, the largest divorce firm in the state. I've been practicing family law for 20 years. The same 20 years you've been calling me stupid. The same 20 years you thought I was just doing office work. The same 20 years I've been building my reputation as the attorney who destroys cheating husbands in court. The color drained from his face completely. That's not possible. You work at some small firm. You do paperwork. You've never even mentioned... I never mentioned it because you never asked, Richard. You never asked what I actually do at work. You just assumed. You assumed I was too dumb to be anything important. Too simple to handle complex cases. Too emotional to be taken seriously in a courtroom. But our finances. I've seen your paychecks. Those paychecks are from my personal LLC. My firm's salary goes into a separate account. An account you've never had access to. An account with approximately $2.3 million in it. Money I've saved over 20 years of successful cases. Money that, according to our state's financial disclosure laws, I don't have to share with you because I earned it through my separate business, which you were never part of. Richard was shaking now. You've been lying to me for 20 years? No, I corrected. I've been protecting myself from you for 20 years. There's a difference. I stood up. Picked up my coffee mug. looked down at the man who'd spent 2 decades trying to make me feel worthless. I'll have my firm send over the divorce papers tomorrow. Morrison and Klein, by the way, is my firm. The K in Klein? That's my maiden name. The firm was founded by my grandfather. I'm not just a partner, Richard. I own 60% of the most successful divorce law firm in the state. I walked toward the door, paused, looked back. One more thing. That 8 a.m. meeting you're rushing to? The one with the Henderson account? You might want to check your email. I had my assistant send your company's board of directors a comprehensive file about your relationship with Jessica Turner, junior marketing associate, including hotel receipts charged to the corporate card. Company policy, Section 7.3. Employees in positions of authority are prohibited from intimate relationships with subordinates. Violation results in immediate termination. You wouldn't, he whispered. I already did. The email went out at 6 a.m. I imagine human resources will be calling you any minute now. And as if on cue, his phone rang. I left the kitchen, left Richard standing there with his phone ringing. Left my 20-year marriage without looking back, because I had a courtroom to prepare for and a husband to destroy. Richard hired Martin Kessler, one of the most expensive divorce attorneys in the state. Partner at Kessler and Romberg. Graduate of Yale Law, 57 years old. Silver fox hair. $900 an hour billing rate. I knew Martin. Of course I knew Martin. We'd been opposing counsel on 3 cases over the years. I'd destroyed him all 3 times. Our first meeting was in a neutral conference room downtown. Standard divorce mediation setup. Long table. Uncomfortable chairs. Coffee that tasted like regret. Martin walked in with Richard. Both men in expensive suits. Both radiating confidence. I was already there, wearing my courtroom armor. Navy blue Armani suit, white blouse, pearl earrings. Hair pulled back in a simple chignon. Minimal makeup. I looked exactly like what I was. A weapon wrapped in professional polish. Martin's eyes widened when he saw me. Catherine? Catherine Morrison? Hello, Martin, I said pleasantly. How's Margaret doing? Margaret was his wife. I'd had coffee with her at a legal conference 3 years ago. She'd complained about Martin's long hours and wandering eye. Martin's smile tightened. She's well. Thank you for asking. Richard looked between us, confused. You two know each other? We've opposed each other in court, I explained. 3 times. I won all 3. That's not... Martin started. The Hawthorne case, 2015, I interrupted. Your client, Mr. Hawthorne, attempted to hide $4 million in offshore accounts. I found them all. Judge awarded Mrs. Hawthorne 70% of marital assets plus full child support. The Webster case, 2017. Your client claimed his business was failing to avoid paying alimony. I proved he was moving money to his brother's company. Judge ordered full forensic accounting, and your client ended up paying triple what he would have in the initial settlement. And the Peterson case, 2019. Should I continue? Martin's jaw clenched. I think we all understand that you're experienced in divorce law, Catherine. But this is personal. Perhaps you should consider recusing yourself and letting another attorney handle. No, I said simply. I'm representing myself. Now, shall we discuss settlement terms, or should I just file the full petition tomorrow and let the court handle it? Richard leaned forward. Kat, come on. We can work this out. We've been married 20 years. Doesn't that mean anything to you? It means you had 20 years to treat me with respect, I said. You chose not to. Now we're here. I want 50% of everything, Richard said. The house, your business, your accounts, your retirement funds. We built this life together. No, I interrupted. We didn't build anything together, Richard. I built my career while you actively tried to undermine it. You built nothing except a series of lies and a relationship with a woman half your age. The affair is irrelevant, Martin jumped in. California is a no-fault state. Adultery doesn't impact asset division. Actually, Martin, we live in one of the few states where financial misconduct during an affair can impact asset division. Those hotel rooms Richard charged to our joint credit card? That's marital funds used to finance an extramarital affair. The gifts he bought Jessica, I have receipts for jewelry, clothes, even a weekend trip to Cabo, all purchased with marital money. The court can absolutely consider that financial misconduct when dividing assets. Martin's expression changed. He knew I was right. But I'm willing to be reasonable, I continued. Here's my settlement offer. Richard gets to keep his personal belongings, his car, and his 401k. I keep the house, which was purchased with my separate business income before marriage. I have documentation. I keep my business, which he had no involvement in. We split the joint savings account 50-50, which amounts to about $40,000 each. No alimony for either party. Clean break, Richard slammed his hand on the table. That's insane! The house is worth $2 million. Your business is worth millions. You can't just— I can, I said calmly. Because I can prove every dollar came from my separate income. Income you never acknowledged. Income you probably didn't even know existed because you never bothered to ask what I actually earned. Your Honor will never agree to this, Martin said. This is clearly an inequitable distribution. Then we'll go to trial, I said, standing up, where I'll present evidence of Richard's 20-year campaign of emotional and financial abuse, where I'll show the court how he deliberately tried to undermine my career, discourage my professional development, and isolate me from my own success, where I'll document every condescending comment, every dismissal, every moment he treated me like I was stupid. I pulled out a thick folder from my briefcase, dropped it on the table. That's a partial summary. 200 pages of documented emotional abuse, text messages, emails, recorded conversations, all legal under our state's one-party consent laws. Witness statements from friends, colleagues, even Richard's own mother about how he talked about me behind my back. Richard paled. You recorded our conversations? Not all of them. Just the ones where you were particularly cruel. Just the ones where you called me dumb, stupid, simple, emotional, irrational. Just the ones where you told your friends I was dead weight, and you were only staying married because it looked bad for business to be divorced. Martin picked up the folder, started flipping through pages. With each page, his expression grew darker. There's more, I continued. Company credit card receipts showing Richard charged $87,000 in business expenses over the past 3 years that were actually personal gifts for his mistress. That's embezzlement. I've already reported it to his company's board. They're investigating. If charges are filed, Richard could face up to 5 years in prison. You're bluffing, Richard said, but his voice shook. I don't bluff, Richard. I'm a lawyer. I deal in evidence, and I have mountains of it. I picked up my briefcase. You have 48 hours to accept my settlement offer. After that, I file the full petition and everything becomes public record. Every affair. Every lie. Every ugly moment of our marriage. It'll be in court documents. In news articles. Your business colleagues will read about it. Your mother will read about it. Jessica will read about it, especially the part where you told me she was just a phase, and you'd never actually leave me for her? I walked to the door, paused, looked, back at Richard's destroyed expression, 20. Years you called me stupid, Richard. I hope it was worth it. Richard didn't accept my settlement offer. Of course he didn't. Men like Richard never do. They can't accept that they've lost until a judge tells them they've lost. Even then, they usually appeal. Instead, 46 hours after our mediation meeting, Martin Kessler filed a counterpetition that was so audacious, so legally absurd, that I actually laughed when I read it. Richard was claiming spousal support, $15,000 per month, claiming he'd become accustomed to a certain lifestyle that my income provided, business interest, 50% ownership of Morrison and Klein, claiming he'd provided emotional support that contributed to my success. The house, full ownership, claiming his career sacrifices to support my work entitled him to the marital home. Retirement assets. All of my retirement accounts, claiming they were marital property, regardless of whose name they were in. Legal fees. Reimbursement of all his attorney costs, claiming I had more resources, and it was unfair for him to have to pay. It was the legal equivalent of a toddler's tantrum. demanding everything, entitled to nothing, but the really interesting part was buried in page 17 of the 30-page document. A claim I'd been waiting for. Hoping for, actually. Petitioner claims respondent engaged in fraudulent concealment of income and assets throughout the marriage, constituting financial abuse and grounds for criminal investigation. He was accusing me of financial abuse. The irony was so delicious I could taste it, because by making that claim, Richard had opened a door that let me introduce everything about our financial situation into evidence. Every account, every transaction, every dollar, including the ones he thought I didn't know about. I called my junior associate, Sarah Chen, into my office. Sarah was 29, brilliant, hungry. She reminded me of myself 20 years ago, before I made the mistake of marrying Richard. "Sarah," I said, sliding Richard's counter petition across my desk. "Remember that forensic accounting workshop you took last year? The one on finding hidden assets in high-net-worth divorces?" She nodded. "Time to put it to work. Richard Morrison just accused me of hiding assets, which means we get to subpoena his financial records, all of them, 20 years back. And I want you to find every hidden account, every lie, every dollar he's moved offshore." Sarah's eyes lit up. "We're going scorched earth?" "Scorched earth, salted fields, burned bridges. I want nothing left standing." Over the next 6 weeks, Sarah and her team of forensic accountants tore through Richard's financial life like a tornado through a trailer park. They found hidden account, drawer 1, Cayman Islands bank account with $380,000. Funded by bonuses Richard claimed he never received. Hidden account number 2. Shell Corporation in Delaware holding $520,000 in real estate investments. Property purchased using money from our joint accounts that Richard claimed went to business expenses. Hidden account 3. Bitcoin wallet with approximately $190,000. Purchase starting in 2017 using money Richard claimed went to client entertainment. Hidden account 4. Joint account with Jessica Turner, his mistress, containing $67,000. Funded entirely by transfers from Richard's personal accounts that were supposed to be for household expenses. Total hidden assets, $157,000 plus. Sarah found something even better. Richard had been lying about his income for 12 years. His company, Morrison Investment Group, yes, he'd named it after my family name, which I'd kept professionally, the audacity, had been far more profitable than Richard ever disclosed. His tax returns showed an annual income of $280,000. The company's actual books showed he'd been paying himself $280,000 in salary, but also taking shareholder distributions of an additional $340,000 per year. For 12 years, Richard had been making $620,000 annually, while claiming he only made $280,000. That's $4.8 million in undisclosed income over 12 years. Money that, under our state's laws, should have been considered marital property subject to division. Money he'd hidden while calling me a financial abuser. Richard's deposition was scheduled for a Thursday morning at 9 a.m., standard procedure. His lawyer Martin would be there. My lawyer, which was me since I was representing myself, would ask questions. A court reporter would transcribe everything. Richard arrived looking confident. Too confident. He'd probably spent the last month convincing himself this was all a misunderstanding, that he could charm his way through it, that I'd back down once I saw he was serious. He had no idea what was coming. The deposition room was small, windowless, institutional gray walls, a long table with chairs on either side. The court reporter sat at the end, fingers poised over her stenography machine. I sat across from Richard with 3 banker's boxes full of documents. 20 years of financial records. 20 years of evidence. 20 years of his lies, printed out and organized into color-coded sections. "Good morning, Mr. Morrison," I said formally. "Please state your full name for the record." "Richard James Morrison," he said, his voice steady. He looked at Martin, who nodded encouragingly. And you understand you're under oath? That lying during this deposition constitutes perjury? I understand. Excellent. Let's begin. I pulled out the first document. Richard's 2023 tax return. Mr. Morrison, according to your tax return, you made $280,000 in 2023. Is that correct? Yes. And that's your total income? Your complete earnings for the year? Martin leaned forward. Catherine, I'm not sure what is that your total income, Mr. Morrison? I repeated. Or did you receive additional money from other sources? Richard hesitated. Just for a second. But it was enough. That's my salary, he said carefully. I didn't ask about your salary. I asked about your total income. I may have received some bonuses. Shareholder distributions. That kind of thing? May have? I pulled out another document. This is a bank statement for Morrison Investment Group's corporate account. It shows a transfer of $340,000 to your personal account on December 15th, 2023. Labeled shareholder distribution. Is that one of the bonuses you may have received? Martin's pen stopped moving. He looked at Richard, realization dawning. Richard started. That's a business expense. A business expense paid directly into your personal checking account? It's complicated. You wouldn't understand the financial structures. Mr. Morrison, I interrupted, my voice ice cold. I've been a divorce attorney for 20 years. I've handled hundreds of cases involving business income, shareholder distributions, and hidden assets. I understand financial structures perfectly. What I don't understand is why you committed perjury on your financial disclosure forms. Silence. Let me refresh your memory, I continued, pulling out more documents. In your mandatory financial disclosure filed with this court on March 3rd of this year, you listed your annual income as $280,000. You swore, under penalty of perjury, that this was your complete and accurate income. Were you lying then or are you lying now? The distributions aren't technically income. They're taxable income, Mr. Morrison. The IRS considers them income. This court considers them income. And you hid them. For 12 years. I slid a stack of paper across the table. 12 years of bank statements showing distributions totaling $4.08 million, $4.08 million in undisclosed income. Money that should have been reported as marital income. Money that's now subject to division in this divorce. Money you hid while accusing me of financial abuse. Richard's face had gone gray. Let's move on, I said briskly. Do you know a woman named Jessica Turner? Yes, she works at my company. And what is your relationship with Ms. Turner? She's an employee, junior marketing associate, just an employee? Richard glanced at Martin. Martin gave a tiny shake of his head. But I saw it. Mr. Morrison, I'll remind you that you're under oath. Do you have a personal relationship with Jessica Turner? We're friendly. Friendly. I pulled out a photo. Richard and Jessica at the Rosewood Hotel, visible through the window. This photo was taken on March 20th, our 20th wedding anniversary. The night you told me you couldn't make our anniversary dinner because of an emergency work meeting. Is this what emergency work meetings look like, Mr. Morrison? Martin stood up. Catherine, this is harassment. My client's personal relationships are not relevant to... Your client filed a counterpetition claiming he deserves spousal support because he was a faithful, supportive spouse. I shot back. His infidelity is absolutely relevant. Sit down, Martin. Martin sat down. Mr. Morrison, are you in a sexual relationship with Jessica Turner? Silence, Mr. Morrison. Yes. How long has this relationship been going on? About 3 years. 3 years. I pulled out more documents. These are credit card statements. Charges at the Rosewood Hotel. Twice a week, every week for 3 years. Room 1247, registered under Ms. Turner's name but paid for with our joint credit card. A credit card funded by marital assets. Would you like to calculate how much marital money you spent on your affair? Or should I? I didn't wait for an answer. 87,340. $87,340 of marital funds spent on hotel rooms, dinners, gifts, and weekend trips for your mistress. While I was home cooking you dinner. While you were calling me stupid. while you were telling our friends I was just a housewife. Richard's hands were shaking. Let's talk about offshore accounts, I said, pulling out another stack of documents. Do you have any bank accounts in foreign countries? No, Richard said quickly. Too quickly. You're sure? No accounts in the Cayman Islands? The Bahamas? Switzerland? No, I smiled. Mr. Morrison, this is a subpoena response from First Cayman National Bank. It shows an account in your name with a current balance of $380,000. Are you telling me this isn't your account? The room was completely silent except for the clicking of the court reporter's machine. Richard swallowed hard. I forgot about that account. You forgot about $380,000. It's an old account. I haven't accessed it in years. This statement is from 2 weeks ago. There was a deposit of $50,000 on May 3rd. You forgot about an account you deposited $50,000 into 2 weeks ago? Martin put his hand on Richard's arm. I'd like to request a recess to consult with my client. No, I said. Mr. Morrison, where did that $50,000 come from? Richard said nothing. Let me tell you where it came from. It came from the sale of stock in Morrison Investment Group. Stock you claimed was worthless in your financial disclosure. Stock you sold 2 weeks ago after filing for divorce, after claiming you had no hidden assets, and deposited into a foreign account I wasn't supposed to know about. I leaned forward. Mr. Morrison, do you know what we call it when someone hides assets during divorce proceedings? We call it fraud. Do you know what the penalties are for defrauding the court? Contempt charges, fines, potential jail time. And do you know what happens to people who commit fraud during divorce proceedings? They lose everything. The court awards the innocent spouse up to 100% of the fraudulent party's assets. Richard looked like he might vomit. So here's what's going to happen, I continued. You're going to withdraw your counterpetition. You're going to accept my original settlement offer, which, by the way, was extraordinarily generous given what I've just uncovered. You're going to pay all court costs and legal fees, and you're going to do it quietly, without filing any appeals or making any public statements. And if I don't? Richard's voice was barely a whisper. Then I take this evidence to the district attorney. I file criminal complaints for fraud, embezzlement, and tax evasion. I make sure every newspaper in the city knows that Richard Morrison, CEO of Morrison Investment Group, is a criminal. I destroy your reputation so thoroughly that you'll never work in this city again. I stood up, collected my documents, looked down at the man I'd spent 20 years married to. You called me stupid for 20 years, Richard. You thought I was too dumb to see through your lies, too simple to understand your schemes, too emotional to fight back. You were wrong about all of it. I walked to the door, paused, delivered the final blow. You have 24 hours to accept my terms. After that, I'm going to court. And Richard, when I do, it won't take a trial. It won't take weeks of arguments and motions. It's going to take 20 minutes. 20 minutes for me to present this evidence. 20 minutes for the judge to rule in my favor. 20 minutes to take everything you own. I left him sitting there, his entire life crumbling around him. 20 years he'd called me stupid. 20 minutes to prove exactly how wrong he was. Richard didn't accept my terms. Of course he didn't. Pride is a powerful drug. Even when you're drowning, sometimes you refuse to grab the life preserver because admitting you need help means admitting you were wrong. So we went to court. The hearing was scheduled for Tuesday morning, 9 a.m., in Judge Rebecca Martinez's courtroom. Judge Martinez was 58 years old, 23 years on the bench, and had a reputation for two things: brilliant legal analysis and absolute intolerance for bullshit. She was perfect. The night before the hearing, I didn't sleep. Not because I was nervous. I'd been preparing for this for 20 years. But because I wanted to go through everything one more time. Every document. Every exhibit. Every argument. Sarah came to my office at 11 p.m. with Chinese food and coffee. You should sleep, she said, setting down the food. You're going to destroy him tomorrow. You know it, I know it. Hell, Martin Kessler knows it. That's why he filed 3 motions to delay the hearing. All denied, I said with satisfaction. Judge Martinez had rejected every one of Martin's attempts to postpone. She'd seen through the stalling tactics immediately. "So why are you still here?" Sarah asked. I looked at the wall of my office. 20 years of diplomas, awards, certificates. 20 years of cases won. 20 years of helping women escape men exactly like Richard. "Because this isn't just about winning," I said quietly. "This is about every woman who's ever been called stupid by the man who's supposed to love her. Every woman who's been told she's too emotional, too simple, too dumb to understand complex topics. Every woman who's been underestimated and dismissed and gaslit." I turned to Sarah. "Tomorrow, when I walk into that courtroom, I'm not just representing myself. I'm representing every one of them, and I'm going to show them that when someone underestimates you, when someone dismisses you, when someone calls you stupid for 20 years, I smiled. "You spend 20 minutes destroying them," Sarah grinned. "I've prepared the exhibits. 37 documents, all color-coded, all cross-referenced, all admissible. Martin won't be able to object to any of it. I've anticipated every argument he could possibly make and prepared counter-arguments. I've created a timeline of Richard's financial fraud that a child could follow. And I've drafted the proposed order for Judge Martinez to sign. It's airtight. You're going to be a partner someday," I told her. "I learned from the best," she replied. We worked until 2 a.m., going through every detail. At 2:15 a.m., Sarah finally convinced me to go home and get at least a few hours of sleep. I drove through empty streets, my city quiet and dark. The city where I'd built my career. The city where I'd hidden my success from my own husband. The city where tomorrow I would finally stop hiding. I got home, the house that would fully be mine after tomorrow, and walked through rooms full of memories. 20 years of marriage, 20 years of lies, 20 years of being someone I wasn't. In the bedroom, I opened my closet. Pulled out the suit I'd bought specifically for this day, charcoal gray Dior, perfectly tailored. The suit I'd worn to every major victory of my career. My armor, my war paint. I laid it out on the bed. Set my alarm for 5:30 a.m. and finally allowed myself to sleep. I dreamed of courtrooms, of justice, of 20 minutes that would change everything. When my alarm went off, I was ready. I showered, dressed, did my makeup with the precision of a surgeon. Every detail mattered. Hair pulled back in a sleek bun. Diamond stud earrings, the ones I'd bought myself with my first partner bonus. Watch that cost more than Richard's car, also bought with my own money. I looked at myself in the mirror. Catherine Morrison, senior partner, elite divorce attorney, woman who'd spent 20 years being underestimated. Today was the day I stopped, pretending to be small. I arrived at the courthouse at 8:15 a.m. Sarah was already there with 2 rolling cases full of evidence. "Ready?" she asked. "I've been ready for 20 years, I replied. Martin and Richard arrived at 8:45 a.m. Richard looked terrible, like he hadn't slept in days. Martin looked resigned, like a general who knows he's lost the battle but has to show up anyway. At exactly 9 a.m., the bailiff called out, "All rise." The Honorable Judge Rebecca Martinez presiding. Judge Martinez entered. 50s, short gray hair, sharp eyes that missed nothing. She sat at the bench, arranged her papers, and looked directly at me. "Mrs. Morrison, I understand you're representing yourself in this matter." "Yes, Your Honor." "And Mr. Morrison, you're represented by Mr. Kessler?" "Yes, Your Honor," Martin said. "Excellent. I've reviewed the filings. I've reviewed the depositions, and I've reviewed the evidence. Mrs. Morrison, I'm going to give you 30 minutes to present your case. Mr. Kessler, you'll have 30 minutes to respond. But I'll warn you both, I've been doing this for 23 years. I can spot fraud, I can spot lies, and I have very little patience for either. Am I clear?" "Yes, Your Honor," we both said. "Mrs. Morrison, proceed." I stood up, walked to the podium, placed my notes in front of me, notes I'd memorized but brought anyway, just in case. And then I looked at Richard. Really looked at him. This man who'd spent 20 years trying to make me small. I smiled, and I began. "Your Honor, I began, my voice clear and steady. 20 years ago, I married Richard Morrison. I was a 28-year-old junior associate at a prestigious law firm. I had dreams, ambitions, a future. I paused. Let that sink in. Richard Morrison told me he loved my intelligence, my strength, my ambition. He proposed by telling me I was the smartest woman he'd ever met. And then systematically, over the next 20 years, he tried to convince me, and everyone around us, that I was stupid. Judge Martinez leaned forward slightly, her eyes sharp. He succeeded, Your Honor. For 20 years, everyone believed I was just a housewife, a woman who did some office work, a simple woman who couldn't understand complex topics, a wife whose only value was making dinner and looking pretty at corporate events. I pulled out the first exhibit, Exhibit A, Your Honor. This is my law degree from Harvard, graduated top 5% of my class. After Richard and I married, I never once mentioned this degree to his friends or colleagues, because Richard had convinced me that talking about my education made me seem arrogant and unfeminine. I placed it on the evidence table. Pulled out the next document, Exhibit B, my partnership agreement with Morrison and Klein signed 15 years ago. I became a named partner in one of the largest divorce firms in this state. Richard attended my partnership celebration, gave a toast, and the next day, he told me that my promotion was nice, but not really a big deal because I was just doing paperwork. Judge Martinez made a note. For 20 years, Your Honor, I let him lie. I let him underestimate me. I let him tell people I was stupid. And while he did that, I documented everything. I pulled out a thick binder, Exhibit C through Exhibit Q. 15 exhibits documenting Richard's emotional and financial abuse. Text messages, emails, recorded conversations, all legal under our state's one-party consent laws. Witness statements, a 20-year pattern of belittling, dismissing, and gaslighting. I opened to a page. Read it aloud. Kat is too dumb to understand investments, so I handle all our money. That's what Richard told his financial advisor in 2019. Except Richard wasn't handling our money. He was hiding it. I pulled out the offshore account statements. Exhibit R Cayman Islands bank account, $380,000. Funded by bonuses Richard claimed he never received. Money he hid while telling me we needed to budget carefully. Exhibit S Shell Corporation in Delaware. $520,000 in real estate investments. Purchased using our joint savings. Money Richard transferred without my knowledge or consent. Exhibit T Bitcoin wallet. $190,000. Purchased starting in 2017, during the cryptocurrency boom. Richard told me Bitcoin was too complicated for me to understand. Turns out it was just too illegal to explain. I was moving quickly now, efficiently, each exhibit building on the last. Exhibit U joint account with Jessica Turner, his mistress, $67,000. Funded entirely by transfers from accounts that were supposed to pay our mortgage, our utilities, our household expenses. Judge Martinez's expression had gone cold. Total hidden assets, $157,000, more than $1 million. Richard hid from me while calling me too stupid to understand finances. I placed all the account statements on the evidence table. A paper monument to his fraud. But wait, Your Honor, it gets better. I pulled out Richard's tax returns, all 12 years of them. For 12 years, Richard has been committing tax fraud. He reported an annual income of $280,000 on his returns. But his company books, which I subpoenaed, show he was also taking shareholder distributions of $340,000 per year. Money he never disclosed. Money he never paid proper taxes on. That's $4 or $8 million in undisclosed income over 12 years. Income that should have been considered marital property. Income that, had I known about it, would have changed every financial decision we made as a couple. I turned to Richard. He was pale, sweating, looking like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Your Honor, Richard Morrison filed a counter-petition claiming I'm guilty of financial abuse, that I hid assets from him. That I'm the liar in this marriage? I smiled. I'd like to present Exhibit Z. I pulled out a single sheet of paper. My financial disclosure form. the one I'd filed with the court at the start of the divorce. This is my complete financial disclosure. Every account, every asset, every source of income. It's all here, transparent, honest, complete. I placed it on the evidence table. I'm not the one who lied, Your Honor. I'm the one who finally stopped letting him call me stupid. I checked my watch. 12 minutes had passed. I have 18 more exhibits documenting Richard's affair with Jessica Turner. Hotel receipts, gifts purchased with marital funds, text messages, photos, but I don't think the court needs to see all of them. I think the pattern is clear. Judge Martinez nodded. The pattern is very clear, Mrs. Morrison. Is there anything else? Just one thing, Your Honor. I pulled out the final document. This is Richard's deposition transcript from 2 weeks ago. Page 47, line 16. I asked Richard under oath if he had any foreign bank accounts. He said no. That was perjury, Your Honor, committed in front of a court reporter, on the record, while he was represented by counsel. I looked at Martin Kessler. He was staring at his legal pad, not meeting anyone's eyes. I'm asking the court to find that Richard Morrison has committed fraud, perjury, and financial abuse during these proceedings. I'm asking the court to reject his counterpetition in its entirety. And I'm asking the court to order the following. I pulled out Sarah's perfectly drafted order. Richard Morrison will retain his personal belongings, his car, and his 401k. I will retain the house, which was purchased with my separate business income. I will retain full ownership of Morrison & Klein, which Richard had no involvement in. We will split our legitimate joint savings, approximately $40,000 equally. Additionally, Your Honor, I'm requesting that Richard be ordered to pay all court costs, all legal fees, and be required to make full financial disclosure to the IRS regarding his unreported income. And I'm requesting that this court refer the matter to the district attorney's office for potential criminal prosecution. I placed the proposed order on Judge Martinez's bench. 20 years. Your Honor, 20 years Richard Morrison called me stupid. 20 years he lied to me, cheated on me, and stole from me. 20 years I waited for this moment. I looked at Richard one last time, and it took 20 minutes to destroy him. I sat down. The courtroom was silent. Judge Martinez looked at Martin Kessler. Mr. Kessler, does your client have anything to say? Martin stood slowly. Your Honor, I'd like to request a recess to consult with my client. Denied, Judge Martinez said. Your client had months to be honest. He chose to lie. Multiple times. Under oath. I'm ready to rule. Your Honor, please, if we could just... Mr. Kessler, sit down. Martin sat. Judge Martinez looked at her notes. Then at Richard. Then at me. Mrs. Morrison, in 23 years on this bench, I've seen a lot of divorce cases. I've seen people at their worst. Their greediest. Their most vindictive. But I have never seen such a systematic pattern of fraud, emotional abuse, and perjury as I've seen from Mr. Morrison in this case. Richard's hands were shaking. The evidence is overwhelming. The offshore accounts. The hidden income. The affair funded by marital assets. The perjury. Mr. Morrison, you didn't just lie to your wife. You lied to this court. You committed crimes, multiple crimes, and you did it while having the audacity to claim that she was the abuser. Judge Martinez picked up my proposed order. Mrs. Morrison, your proposed order is reasonable, fair, and legally sound. I'm granting it in full. Additionally, I'm awarding you 100% of all previously hidden assets, the offshore accounts, the Delaware Corporation, the Bitcoin, and the joint account with Ms. Turner. Mr. Morrison's fraud vitiates any claim he had to marital property. Richard made a sound, almost a sob. Furthermore, Judge Martinez continued, I'm ordering Mr. Morrison to pay $75,000 in legal fees to Mrs. Morrison, and I'm referring this case to the district attorney for investigation of tax fraud, perjury, and embezzlement. She signed the order with hard, decisive strokes. Mr. Morrison, you called your wife stupid for 20 years. You thought you were smarter than her, better than her. You thought she'd never figure out your schemes. You were wrong about all of it. Judge Martinez looked at me. something like respect in her eyes. "Mrs. Morrison, you are one of the finest divorce attorneys I've ever seen in my courtroom. And you just proved why. Case closed." She struck her gavel. 20 minutes. Exactly 20 minutes from the moment I started speaking to the moment Judge Martinez signed that order. 20 years he called me stupid. 20 minutes I took everything he owned. The courtroom cleared quickly after Judge Martinez's ruling. Richard and Martin left through a side door. I didn't watch them go. I was too busy signing papers, coordinating with the clerk, making sure every detail of the judgment was properly filed. Sarah waited for me in the hallway. When I finally emerged, she hugged me. That was the most beautiful legal destruction I've ever witnessed. 20 years in the making, I said. We walked out of the courthouse together. The morning sun was bright, almost blinding after the fluorescent courtroom lights. My phone buzzed. A text from Elena, the paralegal at my firm who'd been following the case. "The DA's office just called. They're opening a formal investigation into Richard. They said your evidence package was the most comprehensive referral they've ever received." I smiled. Good, another text. This one from an unknown number. "This is Jessica Turner. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I had no idea he was married. He told me he was divorced. He showed me a different ring finger. He lied to both of us." I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I typed back, "He's very good at lying. I hope you find someone who deserves you." She responded immediately. "I already filed a report with HR about the company credit card fraud. He's being terminated this afternoon." Perfect. Over the next week, the dominoes fell one by one. Monday. Richard's company fired him. Not just fired, they filed a civil suit to recover the $87,000 he'd fraudulently charged to corporate cards. Tuesday. The IRS opened an investigation into his unreported income. Potential tax liability. $1.2 million plus penalties. Wednesday. The DA filed criminal charges, fraud, perjury, tax evasion. Richard was arrested. Bail set at $500,000. Thursday. Richard's mother called me. "Catherine, please. He's my son. Can you drop the charges? Can you make this stop?" "Mrs. Morrison," I said gently, "I can't drop criminal charges. Only the DA can do that. And the DA doesn't drop charges when someone commits multiple felonies." "But he could go to prison." "Yes," I agreed. "He could. That's what happens when you commit crimes." He made a mistake. He made hundreds of mistakes. Over 20 years. Calculated, deliberate mistakes. He didn't make an error, Mrs. Morrison. He built a life on lies. She hung up crying. I felt nothing. Friday. Richard's lawyer called. Not Martin. Martin had withdrawn from the case. A new lawyer, younger, desperate sounding. "Mrs. Morrison, my client would like to discuss a settlement." "We already settled," I said. "The court ordered it." "What's left to discuss?" "The criminal charges. If you could write a letter to the DA asking for leniency." "No, please." "He's willing to apologize. He's willing to—" I spent 20 years listening to Richard's apologies. They were all lies. The answer is no. I hung up. Richard Morrison pleaded guilty to 3 counts of felony fraud and 1 count of perjury. The judge sentenced him to 4 years in prison and ordered him to pay restitution of $1.8 million to various parties. Me, the IRS, his former company. He'll be eligible for parole in 2 years if he demonstrates good behavior. I'm not holding my breath. As for me, I'm finally living the life I should have been living all along. I kept the house, renovated it completely, erased every trace of Richard from the walls, the floors, the memories. It's mine now. Fully, completely mine. I kept my firm. Morrison & Klein is thriving. We've taken on 12 new associates this year, including Sarah, who I promoted to junior partner. We're opening a second office across the state. I've also started a foundation, the Catherine Morrison Foundation for Survivors of Financial Abuse. We provide free legal services to people escaping partners who've hidden assets. lied about income, or used money as a weapon. So far, we've helped 127 people, recovered $8.3 million in hidden assets, won 94 cases, lost 0. I've also started doing something I never did during my marriage. I've started telling people who I actually am. At parties, when someone asks what I do, I don't say, "Oh, just some legal work." I say, "I'm Catherine Morrison. I own the largest divorce firm in the state. I specialize in destroying cheating spouses who hide assets. I've never lost a case." The reactions are always interesting. Some people are intimidated. Some are impressed. Some immediately start asking for advice about their own marriages. I give that advice freely now. Life's too short to watch people suffer in silence. I've also started dating. Nothing serious yet, but I've learned that there are men out there who aren't intimidated by successful women. Men who think I'm a lawyer is attractive, not threatening. Men who listen when I talk instead of explaining things to me. It's refreshing. Last week I had coffee with Judge Martinez. She invited me to speak at a judicial conference about recognizing financial abuse in divorce cases. "Catherine," she said, "your case should be taught in every law school in the country. The way you documented everything, the way you presented evidence, the way you stayed patient for 20 years, waiting for the perfect moment. It was masterful." "It was survival," I corrected. "I couldn't leave until I knew I could win. Some women don't have that luxury." "Which is why you're starting the foundation," she said, "to give them that luxury." Exactly. We talked for 2 hours. About law, justice, the court system's failures when it comes to protecting abuse victims, about how the system is designed by men who've never been called stupid by their partners, who've never had their intelligence questioned, who've never had to prove they deserve respect. When I left that coffee shop, I felt something I hadn't felt in 20 years. Hope. Not hope that Richard would change. Not hope that our marriage could be saved. Not hope that somehow, magically, the past would be different. Hope that the future would be better. Hope that I could help other women avoid the mistakes I made. Hope that someday, no woman would have to spend 20 years pretending to be stupid just to survive her own marriage. Last month, I got a letter from a woman named Jennifer. She'd read about my case in the news. She wrote, "Dear Mrs. Morrison, my husband has been calling me stupid for 12 years. He controls all our money. He tells people I'm just a secretary, even though I'm actually an accountant. He's cheating on me, I know he is, but I have no proof. I have no money. I have nowhere to go. But I read about you, about how you waited, how you documented, how you fought back. And I realized I can do that too. I can be smart about this. I can wait for the right moment. Thank you for showing me that being patient isn't the same as being weak. Thank you for showing me that sometimes the best revenge is justice, Jennifer." I called her that day. Scheduled a free consultation, connected her with a private investigator, set up a separate bank account in her name only. She's still married, still documenting, still waiting for her moment. But when that moment comes, she'll be ready and she'll win. Because that's what we do now. We smart women who've been called stupid. We patient women who've been underestimated. We strong women who've been told we're too emotional to think clearly. We wait. We document. We prepare, and then we destroy them, legally, completely, beautifully. For 20 years, Richard Morrison called me stupid. For 20 years, he thought he was superior, smarter, better. It took me 20 minutes in a courtroom to prove he was wrong, but it took me 20 years to become the woman who could do it. And you know what? Those 20 years weren't wasted, because every condescending comment taught me patience. Every lie taught me to verify everything. Every dismissal taught me to value myself. Every moment he tried to make me small taught me exactly how powerful I really was. Richard Morrison tried to destroy Catherine Morrison, the Harvard-educated lawyer. Instead, he created Catherine Morrison, the woman who destroys men like him for a living. And I've never been happier. So to every woman reading this, every woman who's been called stupid by someone who claimed to love her, every woman who's been dismissed and underestimated and gaslit, you're not stupid. You're not too emotional. You're not too simple to understand complex topics. You're smart enough to see through the lies. You're strong enough to document the truth. And you're powerful enough to fight back when the moment is right. It might take 20 years. It might take 20 months. It might take 20 days. But when your moment comes, make it count. Make them regret every time they underestimated you. My name is Catherine Morrison. I'm 48 years old. I'm a divorce attorney, a business owner, a foundation director, a survivor, and I'm the woman who proved that being called stupid for 20 years doesn't make you stupid, it makes you dangerous.